Okay, I'm going to kick off the webinar this morning because we're on a tight timeline. And I'd like to welcome everyone to Codex Unlocking the Power of the Microsoft Entra Suite. Today, Tushar, do you want to just go to the next slide, please? Thanks. Yeah, I'm going to give you a quick overview on Codec for those who don't know us. And I'd like to introduce you to today's speaker, who is Tushar Kumar, who is our security lead practice and a Microsoft MVP. My name is Jennifer Marr. I'm an enterprise account manager in Codec, and I'll be looking after you today. I'd like to point out as well that there's a Q&A section up there in the banner, in the heading. If anyone has any questions during today's session, if they can pop them in there, and Tushar will try and get to them by the end of the webinar. So those who don't know Codec, I'd like to give you a brief overview. Codec was founded in 1985, so we're heading into our 40th year of business. Our revenues at the moment, at the end of 2023, was in excess of 50 million. Our Azure business has been growing year on year and currently is at 58%. Our D365 and Power Platform business is a much more mature business and is growing at a rate of 37%. To date, we have 302 employees and hiring at the moment. Our Net Promoter Score, which is our customer success score, is at 74. That's up from 65 from last year, which is a great marker on our customer service and how our customers think of Codec. To date, we have 22 Microsoft Partner of the Year awards. And in Codec today, we have 3 MVPs, of which Tushar is one of them. So well done to Tushar on getting recognized by Microsoft as being a Microsoft valued professional. But back to Codec, we've got long-standing customer relationships with our customers, and we have over 200 plus active customers. Why customers like doing business with Codec is we recommend the right technology. And that is really important to the to Codec's managed services and underpinned by our Codec accelerators that Codec Labs have developed, and the AVCs helps with the implementation and the methodologies. Next slide, Tushar, please. Thanks. Codec is Microsoft's largest partner in Ireland. We go under 3 clouds. We go under the Microsoft Business Applications, which is where our D365 business sits. We have the Azure Cloud part of our business, which is where myself and Tushar sit. And then we have our shared services, which is our quality assurance, our PMO, and our business analysts. And to date, we have developed Codec Labs, which allows us to build accelerators to help you to get your product to the market quicker through our portal accelerator and our Codec Regulate. Next slide, Tushar. Yeah. So just to let you know what we're actually trying to achieve this year. So our strong capabilities in the Microsoft ecosystem and the badges that we have to date. So we are a Microsoft Solutions Partner for Security, which is what Tushar is going to be delivering on today. And then we are an Azure Expert MSP, and we'll be going through our accreditations again this year. And we're actually going to be developing this pipeline of advanced specializations over the next 6 months, and AI is going to be hopefully delivered to the business by December. So that's the where we're heading in terms of our accreditations. And I'm going to pass you over to Tushar now, who's going to talk you through the agenda for this morning's webinar. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Jenny. I'll move over to the next slide here. Okay. A very good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining on Friday morning. I know it's hard when we are just looking at long weekend. So today's agenda is going to be around six points here, and basically it's going to be a very light touch. We are going to look at all of these services because there is loads and loads of confusion around one umbrella of Microsoft Entra and what all things are in there. And we'll be looking at all of those in a specific way and how basically it helps from a customer perspective, what exactly it means for you and why you should be looking at all of these services specifically. Okay, so the agenda for today, we have Entra Private Access, Entra Internet Access, Entra Identity Protection, Identity Governance, and Verified ID. So these are the components basically that sits under Entra Suite, which is a new license that has came in as part of Microsoft Entra family. So without wasting time, we'll just straight away jump into the introduction piece of this, right? So, looking at Entra from a holistic perspective, right? So, Azure Active Directory was there. I don't know why the name changed for some sort of marketing reasons. Now it has become Microsoft Entra, but it's not just the name changed. Post this name change, there was a loads of services that came into the umbrella of Microsoft Entra. So Azure Active Directory was really, I believe, the reason behind that was more of because it was known to people as, okay, this is our Active Directory, and we all are used to using Word as Active Directory for our IAM solution in the on-premises world. But with Microsoft Entra, it came with loads of new services. So if you see on the screen, it's not a comprehensive list. It's just a few that I like, and as well as it's going to be interest of this session. So on the identity and access management side, we have Entra ID, which is basically going to give you a loads and loads of functionality around how you manage your identity and all the good stuff that we used to do in Active Directory that moved into cloud world, and also a few sprinkle of good new functionalities as well. You have your identity governance, which we are going to talk about in coming slides here. We have external identity. So for those who have worked with Azure AD B2C or kinds of that, right? One identity or other stuff. Basically, that's Microsoft's a new version of customer identity and access management, which is more customizable, I would say, and you have possibility of going on a pixel level in terms of UI and UX. But this is not going to be a part of today's conversation, unfortunately, because it doesn't come under a specific license that we are going to talk today. Then comes Entra Verified ID. That is one of our agenda item for today. So Verified ID is basically providing your users or your employees or your students or whoever it is, providing them with a proper way of verifying their identity. We'll talk about that. Entra permission management. It's again not going to be today's part of the today's conversation, but it's another functionality within Entra Suite, which is within Entra umbrella, which you can utilize to manage the permissions, and you can effectively actually manage that you're actually applying the least privilege roles on overall environment. And the workload identities is basically going to be for your applications, for your services. You are not relying on a service principal kind of thing, and you're giving your workloads an identity. And that can be a topic of its own. We'll probably plan that in future webinars. So and the last two ones, which basically kicked off this Entra Suite kind of licensing functionality, is your Entra Internet Access and Entra Private Access, and these are going to be the first topics for today. So, for those who have worked with any SASE solutions, secure access, security edge solutions, or SSE solutions, secure service edge solutions, right? You know them for the likes of other vendors doing it for your zero trust network approach, right? Microsoft has it's a little bit late to the party, but yeah, definitely the tools has came in and it is part of your existing license, and it is basically highly integrated with the services that you are using at the moment. So the first one that we are going to talk about is going to be our private access, okay? And if you see on the bottom of this, we are talking about seamlessly replacing the legacy VPN. Okay, so why are we saying we want to replace our VPNs, right? We have been using VPNs for a long time, and it works okay. But from security standpoint, when we are looking at VPNs, right, you cannot give access to someone for a single applications, right? You always configure your Polo devices, you configure your checkpoint devices that has a client VPN service. Someone connects to that and they connect to a specific CIDR range or connect to a specific range within your organization. And that way it is not context aware. So once you have connected to that, and when you move somewhere, you switch your Wi-Fi, it's still connected. It doesn't matter what exactly is happening in there. Right. Second thing is it is not highly integrated. So you have your Active Directory authentication. In some cases, you might have your Azure Active Directory authentication as well, but it is not very much context aware. Once it is connected, it is connected. Basically, we are not looking at from the perspective of that. Also, from the data security perspective, the data flowing within the VPN, and we don't have much of control over that. And that there comes actually the compliance challenges where all the compliances where you want to control the sensitive data, you can't actually apply I'll say CASB on top of that. Okay, so the private access here, what it gives you, so it basically gives you a SASE solution. So basically, it's a part of Microsoft Entra Suite. That's one license that we are talking about. It is a Microsoft SSE solution. What SSE means is Secure Service Edge. It's a well-known term within industry. You can just Google it and you'll find loads of details about what technology that it uses in the back of it. Okay, with the SSE solution, it is basically the way of identity-centric network connection approach. Okay, and when I'll explain what exactly that means for you. So let's say you have your remote workers working from somewhere, you have your devices, and these guys are connecting to your resources. In the world of SSE, the way it is going to be is when you initiate a connection, you will be evaluated with conditional access. So if we take an example, the way we are going to configure it, we have a server which is we are doing RDP every day. In the usual VPN scenario, you go straight from here, you connect your network here, and you go do an RDP. Okay, that's not much context aware. So you don't have a MFA on top of that. You don't have, like, let's say, sign in risks on that. Let's say if the user is connecting somewhere in the other part of the world, you can't control that, right? So in this scenario, what we are talking about is let me just find my eraser here. So in the SSE scenario, when we set this up, the way it is going to be, your endpoints are going to have a specific agent that will be responsible for making sure your connectivity happens. Your identity will be verified with conditional access, first thing with Entra ID, and the conditional access, whatever you define. So let's say you say if someone is doing RDP to XYZ server, let's say that's your domain controller. If someone is trying to do an RDP into your domain controller, in that case, I want the highest level of security. So I want maybe a FIDO2 key to be verified, or you want to make sure that they do a passwordless authentication or some phishing resistant kind of authentication if they are accessing the domain controller kind, or maybe some sensitive server within organization. And with that, you don't need an actual tunnel, so that can happen over the public internet. So basically that's where the SSE solution comes into picture. So your endpoints are connecting directly to the internet, and that's the traffic is going through the Microsoft defined POPs, which is basically giving you a direct tunnel within your corporate network or your environment. We'll see that in the next slide here. Okay, so the way Entra Private Access is set up, this is a simple and bare minimum requirement, and I have that quite a few labs set up at like this as well at the moment. But your user is sitting with a Windows 10 or 11 device. There is a prerequisite that it has to be an Entra or hybrid joint device. The bring your own device scenario, it doesn't support at this point of time. So if you have a bring your own device scenario, that will be a separate conversation. We need to look at other products. But If the device is intra joined or hybrid joined device, all you need is a global secure access client. So the Entra private access and Entra internet access is basically part of global secure access suite from Microsoft. So this particular client that we are talking about, it's a quite lightweight client, and there are a few future predictions around this and that I cannot say exactly, but this is going to be integrated within your Defender for Endpoint as well. So the global secure access client is going to sit on your Windows 10 or 11 basically. So once you have that, your user is sitting anywhere on a public Wi-Fi. Okay, what they will be doing is they will be initiating connection to any of your organizational resources, same as you do when you connect your VPN, that you connect your file share or anything. On the flip side of it, from an administrator perspective or from deployment perspective, right, you will have a private access connector. So if any one of you have worked with Azure AD App Proxy, right, it works the similar fashion. It's basically Microsoft has taken that and built on top of that. So App Proxy was more of a just for HTTPS connection, but the Entra Private Access Connector, it provides you all sort of ports. So you can whatever you can define on the ports, you can basically go with that. So if it is your file share, if it is your SSH, if it is your RDP, or if it is your printers that you want to expose from here, you can do that as well. So this private access connector, it sits on a Windows 2016 or later device. The good thing is you don't need to open anything inbound on this. It only works on outbound. So from the firewall perspective, only you are opening the outbound ports here. Okay. From access perspective, there are a couple of roles, and this might have popped into your intra admin if you're looking at this from past 6 7 months. So global secure access admin is one of the new roles that has come in that you need. Either you need a security admin and you need application admin. The reason why you need all of these, and probably will flip to at the actual portal, we might get more gist of this as well, but these are the roles required for setting this up. And from the licensing standpoint, and we'll probably talk at the end of the towards the end of this session, but the bare minimum that you need is Entra ID P1. So you should have P1, and then for accessing private access, either you can go with a private access standalone license or you can go with the Entra Suite, which comes with private access as well. Okay, if we look at a security use case for this, so basically, when we are looking at the application side, and when we are looking at specifically our legacy application, so let's say you have a legacy application sitting on your on-premise at the moment, people are accessing that, but there is no MFA. It's a web application. It is accessed through your web portal or your internet browser, but there is no MFA on that. You want to put a layer of MFA on that. You can actually set that up with Entra private access, and without changing anything within your code, you will get a first layer of MFA. So whenever someone tries to access that, from your internal perspective, what will happen is they'll be popped with a Microsoft login window. They will log in, and based on the configuration that you have, let's say, or based on their access evaluation. So if it shows that their login is risky, in that case, whatever is the risky login parameters you have, it will basically prompt you to do, oh, let's do a revalidation of your MFA, or maybe let's do a stronger MFA method, like of your authenticator app or Fido key, something like that. This one basically you can define on the any IP, and you can define on any port that you want to expose. So basically in this case, I have one SSH and one RDP defined here. So you can do whatever your applications need. So being it SMB or anything that you can do, and you will get all the good stuff in terms of logs and everything, that whatever access that's happening in there. You can also do a compliant network checks for your for your connection. So any net connection that is happening, if it is not coming in from a compliant network, and by compliant network, you can put in specific, and this we have been doing from long for our M365 or our cloud endpoints, right? So anything that is coming in outside of EU, don't allow that, or anything that is not this IP address range, not coming from this IP address range, which is my office IP, don't allow that. Things like that. So you can actually put the network compliant network checks, whatever is the company policy, and based on that. So consider this in this way. So your network access, your VPN combined with your all the goodness of conditional access. So conditional access we used to do a lot, and we are still working a lot with conditional access in terms of securing our identity. That they both get combined, and that gives additional security in terms of looking at your overall network connectivity. Okay, so that brings me down to the second part of this, which is the internet access. So enter private access, enter internet access, they both are as within the same umbrella as I mentioned. It's a global secure access. So you can see the Entra's internet access. It looks more or less the similar diagram that we saw on the private access, right? But on the right hand side of this, if you look at this guy has changed. So what we are talking about, so what we have talked about our private apps where we have, like, let's say our internal HR systems, our file shares, our RDPs, and all those good stuff. But what if when the user is going into your M365 tenants, is there a validation on top of that or not? If what if the user is going on LinkedIn or YouTube or any other sites, basically, and what if you want to deny all of those and you want to make sure that the users are going into the right places, there is no token theft happening for your M365 kind of things. Okay, so in that case, again, it works in the same fashion. It works from your identities, from your endpoints, from your remote networks. It goes into your conditional access, making sure it validates whatever, let's say for Twitter, we have a policy that says if you're going into Twitter, you need to do a revalidation. Or maybe if you're going on Facebook, you need to do a revalidation. Or maybe if you're going to on YouTube, you shouldn't be going to YouTube, or that, but your C level wants to go to YouTube, so you need to allow it for them. So it's more of a user aware and the context aware access of anything within your environment, and as well as outside of the internet apps. So from Microsoft side, and internet access has actually became GA couple of days back. I'll not even say weeks, a couple of days back. You still have you still have options to avail both of these in a trial mode, just to see how it spans out within your organization, how you it can get benefit out of it. But this is a fairly new service, so if you want to try this out as well along with your existing SSE solutions, so that there might be organizations who is already using Zscaler or some other stuff, you might face that the M365 apps and services that we are talking about here. I lost my mouse. Yeah, the M365 services that we are talking about is more or less a big pain when we are working with the different SSE solutions. So you always have an option to deploy in parallel. So it's not gonna impact anything on your existing setup. So you can do a parallel deployment with your M365 apps and see how it spans out, and then you can take a decision on what all you want to keep it on this. Uh, the good thing is here, you don't need a lot to do. You don't need a lot on your setup side, because all you need is a global secure access client that is the same client that we used for private access. So even though if you're using private access, you can just switch on the internet access and you'll get all the details around that. Okay. From the licensing perspective, as I mentioned, for both of private access and internet access, there is a trial available. I guess it's a 90 days trial, but it basically requires internet access either standalone license or you go with the Entra Suite. Okay. Uh, there is no changes in terms of in terms of how you manage your devices or anything. If you're using Intune or if you're using any other MDM tool, all you need to do is just push this client, or if it is a small set of users, you can actually push it manually, or once this gets in, you are good to go. You will actually see it in action. It will start popping up, and whatever your configuration is, it will work like that. So the use cases from this for this, basically, we talked about the technology behind it, right? So, but more of a from use cases perspective, why you want to do it for your M365 resources. So there's loads of attacks at this point of time happening where you log into your SharePoint with some malicious link, with some like unwanted or open Wi-Fi, and your token gets stolen, and then it gets replayed, and you're actually looking at your your Office 365 getting compromised. Second thing is there is loads of like SharePoint links coming in from different sources. Like you cannot block SharePoint within your organization, right? It's a SharePoint.com URL. You can certainly do certain network restrictions, but that's basically that's basically going to impact productivity as well. But if you want your organization to just go, and this is basically we are talking about tenant restriction policies. So if you want it's XYZ tenant that you work with, and your organization doesn't need to go into any other tenant, you can just switch on the universal tenant restriction, which basically will make sure that users within your tenant, no matter, let's say if it is they get a link which says xyz.sharepoint.com, the moment they try to put their login credentials, it will say, no, you are not going into this. You're not allowed to this because your universal tenant restriction policy says you have to stick with this tenant. So that's another security use case around this. Another good thing, and we have been, if you are not using Defender for endpoint at the moment, it's basically somewhat similar to that. What we are talking about is more of the SWG functionality, which is secure web gateway. So any request that is going out of to internet, either it is going to Facebook, it is going to YouTube, or whatever it is going through the gateway. So you can actually put a block on, okay, so hello user, you cannot go to the streaming website here because that's not allowed by us. Or maybe you can put in categories, you can put in your FQDNs, and you can basically make sure it's there. And it is going to be a user aware functionality, so you can basically make sure whatever that user at any point of time, if he switches laptop as well, he goes onto different laptop with that particular ID, he will still not be able to do that. Okay, I'll just quickly stop for any questions before we go on identity protection. Do we have any questions in here? Doesn't look like. If you have any questions, I'm not monitoring that, but Jenny will let me know if there is any questions. So you can feel free to drop it in the Q&A box.
Yeah, nothing yet, Tushar.
Okay, lovely. Lovely. How am I doing with time? Oh, really good. So identity protection is one other functionality that comes within the Entra Suite itself. So we all have been doing conditional access, and if you have done conditional access at some point of time, right, you might have seen there is a there is a high risk and low risk user login and kind of conditional access that was there earlier on, right? That has evolved into more of a Entra ID protection. So Entra identity protection is basically going to give you a bit of more, again, I'll say, I'm saying context aware a lot, but it is going to be more context aware conditional access functionality. So let's say if there is a user and it is trying to get in from a atypical web travel perspective. Okay, so I logged in from Dublin this morning, and the next second I logged in from Amsterdam. Maybe I'm logging in on a virtual machine, but that's basically a risky login. I cannot travel that fast unless I'm Flash, right? So you get a specific protection around that. You get an alert, and as well as you can set it up in such a way that any user which is getting in, if there is any anomalies based on the Microsoft detections and based on any specific signals that Entra is getting from the user device or the user specifically from the user login, you do either CA policies, which basically blocks that, or you can integrate it with Microsoft Sentinel just so you get anything, or if you use any like third-party SIM, you can basically do that as well. So any user which is having a risky properties based on Microsoft's view and Microsoft detection, it will give you a risky sign-ins, and it will basically tell you, okay, this user is at prob issue. If there is any apps that is coming in, so you know when you do any specific, like let's say at some websites, when you go in there, it will say, oh, do you want to give this app access to this website to log in? At that point of time, you don't know what it is. If that is marked as a risky app, and if that get detected as a risky app, that will be there. If there is any user that looks like it is compromised or doing some behavior which is not expected, or some atypical behavior, basically you will get the risky users as well. So identity protection is fairly simple. It is not I would say in in the current scenario where all these AI attacks and everything happening, identity protection is a must have, just so you are not looking at it all the time, and you are not relying on the manual effort of detecting any like anomalies within your sign in, within your users. You are actually getting intelligent view of that automatically. Okay. Now, moving on to, and these are going to be quick before we go on the Azure portal and see what exactly it looks like. Okay, so the next one is going to be identity governance, and this has been there for long. Okay, it is now part of Entra Suite, but identity governance and the next one, even verified ID, it's there from almost, I think 1.5 year, 2 years almost. So what identity governance provides you is more of a streamlined way of onboarding and user provisioning, managing the access and lifecycle of your users, making sure you have administrators secured and everything, and as well as any access that you have, it is getting re-evaluated. So at some point of time, you might have done, if because it's been there for long, you might have done access reviews set up within your organization. So group, when you create a group, you assign an owner, and then you set up an access review on top of that, which says, okay, this particular group, which is, let's say, we say security group, so we name it SG underscore, that's going to be admins for my HR application, and that has 5 people in it, and you have an access review and one owner assigned to it. So every month, the owner gets an email saying, okay, there are 5 people who has access to this thing, and if the you can set it up that way. If the user doesn't have, if the owner doesn't reply to that or doesn't do anything, it can remove those, or it can leave it as it is, or send a report that it no changes, or it's basically reviewing the access that everyone has. And if that doesn't happen, you can set it up that way, that if no one, because people tend to leave that email, oh, it's an auto-generated email, let's leave it like that. It will actually revoke the access as well, that the owner said nothing, so let's revoke these people's access because they haven't accessed it in a long time. So that is identity governance. That is a part of identity governance now as well. So if you log in, and I'll show you in a second. So if you log into identity governance, you will see it on the portal access reviews. You'll see the licenses has been changed, and you have to use this. You have to get identity governance license for that. Another part of this, which is really time saving and basically helpful for our organizations, is more of the onboarding, provisioning of our resources, and then updating everything within the Entra ID and your Active Directory. So that way it comes into your overall identity lifecycle management, right? So everyone has some sort of HR systems where you have your users getting provisioned here. So your HR onboards your users, which is basically some XYZ hire came in, that XYZ hire will get an HR system profile here. That HR system profile, in usual scenario, what happens it goes to IT, then IT creates that account, and then it goes all the way to the different apps and services, whatever it is. But in that scenario, let's say if the HR says, okay, now this guy has changed, uh, or maybe there is an appraisal cycle, he got promoted, his role changed, and that doesn't go to IT again because role changes are not usually communicated to IT. What happens is you do a role change, and when you are working on something, you need some different access, then you go in there. So your identity lifecycle management, basically, you can integrate your Entra ID with your HR systems, or if you're any of your other record systems, right? Directly to Entra ID. What it does, it's basically it works on a periodic schedule, and when you're looking at this, it gets automatically provisioned on your Entra ID through identity governance, and also you have provisioning agent that can provision the users on Azure Active Directory, sorry, Windows Active Directory as well. So and based on that, you can create packages that, okay, who all will be getting access to what all stuff. And if there is any third party application, you can use identity governance functionalities where you can actually provision into third party SaaS apps as well. So that depends on a little bit of it gets bit tricky when you're looking at support and other stuff, that which application supports or which application doesn't support. But if the application supports SCIM, basically that in that way, and in that case, the gateway that Entra ID provides, you can actually use that, and you can provision your users directly into in an automated way to the SaaS platforms as well. Also, it does gives you any on-premises web servers or application servers that you have. It gives you a provisioning agent that you can put basically, and it can provision user access on a specific, like let's say as SQL Server or on-premises web services or whatever it is. I'll not say it is capable of doing everything, but yeah, it depends on case to case basis, but more in most of the cases you can provision your users directly into the services. Okay, yeah, that's more of the identities lifecycle management. I do have here somewhere. Oh no. Okay, the last one for the section is, and before I go on Q&A, if you have anything, just keep putting on the Q&A here. So we are going to talk about verified IDs, like, and so many times we have been into situations, and let's take an example of a college, right? And the colleges basically provides an identity card that you can basically use anywhere. You can go into bookstores, provide that, and you will be getting discounts on that. Same way it happens in organizations as well. So if you have you get an organization ID, you use that, and basically you can get discounts on hardware stores, on some other stores or something like that. Also, you might as a student, you might have to prove your identity at some places. So basically the verified ID is a way of like proving your identity, so you can actually issue a verified ID to your users or your customers, which is basically it basically depends on the use case we are looking at, and they will be able to verify that identity, or whoever is the partner. Let's say it's a computer website or something like that, or it's a Harvey Norman kind, and they will be able to verify that, okay, this user belongs to Codec, and he is eligible to get 50% discount. I hope it happens. Yeah, but you they will be able to verify that with your verified ID. The way it helps you out is we are going to see that as well. It's a quick Microsoft demo kind as well. But the way it helps you in onboarding like your employees and everything. So let's say you have already someone has already a verified ID which contains their certifications and everything, say from Microsoft side, and you just need to verify that. That will do a face check, and you will be good to go. It will say, yeah, this guy is legitimate. All the things in the back of it is verified. Okay, it's basically very easy. It gives you an easy access to and your applications, your and as well as the services that you are expecting. It's basically makes your life easier in terms of accounts recovery as well, because you have a way of using a verified identity that is sitting in your Microsoft Authenticator app. Okay, so let's talk the final piece of this before we jump into looking at all the services. Okay, so this is what we are looking at from in terms of the Entra Suite here, right? So Entra Suite is sitting on the right hand side. The minimum requirement, as you can see at the bottom of it, is Entra ID P1. If you are using Entra ID P2 already, and if you're using M365 E5 customers specifically, there is a different pricing and there is a different way of doing it. So you can certainly contact us and we can help you out in this. But the services that we talked about, Entra ID protection, Entra ID governance, Entra ID, Entra verified ID, internet access, private access, all of these comes under the Entra suite. All of these services, and probably it will be better instead of me keeping my love of slides. And if I move down to my browser here, right? So you, this is a public link, and it's not a codec exclusive pricing that I'm saying here. So it's basically you can see it on this website here, which is called if you just Google for Microsoft Entra ID Entra plans and pricing, you can see all the different plans, and this is a snapshot we are talking about. So within Entra ID Internet Access, you get everything. So nothing is excluded if you go with Entra ID Suite, first thing. But all of these services that we are talking about, you can go with Entra Suite standalone products as well. So let's say you just have a requirement for 50 users who are going to access HR application, and you don't want to do VPN, the legacy VPN thing, right? In that case, all you need is this license, okay, which is basically for €4.70, and you can use that license to provide those users VPN access, like the Entra private access into your put you into your private apps, likes of your HR apps, or maybe just for RDP, or maybe just for accessing your finance apps, which is sitting on premises or in cloud somewhere in IaaS model. You can use this if you just want to use internet access, you can use this guy, which is basically a standalone license as separate. And as you can see, if you're getting all of these in different bundles, it looks expensive. And that's where Microsoft has done Entra Suite, which is basically a collection of all of these and helping and with a reduced cost, I believe so. Okay, we were talking about Entra Verified ID, and I thought instead of me trying to explain this or showing it somewhere else, there is no harm in showing, and there is no shame in showing it on Microsoft website itself. So the way it works is you get a QR code when you're issuing that ID. Basically, you do that, you do a face check. So your ID and face check, it basically gives you a verified ID from whatever employer it is. You can actually, the one you can see is Woodgroove here, but you can actually change that. You can change the pixels and everything on that just to make sure it goes with your company branding. So it's same as you can store it on your Apple in your Apple wallet or your Google wallet basically, and you can use that at any point of time. It goes into your Authenticator app as well. You can do a quick deployment of this. I won't say it as it's as simple as Microsoft has shown here, but yeah, it's just you go with 3 steps, and basically you will be able to see it in action within your tenant. Okay, there is loads of customizations you can do in terms of making sure, okay, you get everything as you expect on your ID, right? At the time of validation, I'm not sure if it is not playing for some reason, because it usually plays here. Okay, at the time of verification, basically what happens is there is one file that sits on your domain. It's a JSON file, and that is basically going to be a main source of truth for any validation, any identity verification. So it basically calls, so whenever someone, let's say as a seller tries to access something, they will be basically for that discount, they will be validating that ID and they will go back there. Okay. The good thing about this is, and this one plays for some reason. So the good thing about this is at any point of time, if you're working with it, and let's say the students example, right? The academic year completed, and if I still have the ID, which is I cover the date or something on that, and I can go in and get the same discount that I want. But in this case, what we are looking at is you can actually revoke that access. So someone tries to use that validated ID, or they will be revoked. They will not go through because its ID is already revoked. I guess we have a question.
Tushar, there's a question in the Q&A there. Yeah. So may I know the difference between a P2 license and the Entra Suites? Which is the
Okay.
best one to set up automated notifications and alerts on suspicious logins?
Perfect, definitely. So I'll go back here, right? So the suspicious login piece that you're talking about is what we are saying in Entra identity protection, okay? And that basically gets covered in P2 as well. So if you see, there is an overlap between P2 and that's where Microsoft here says as well, there is a special pricing available for Entra ID P2 and M365E5 customers, okay? So that's the reason Microsoft says that, because there is an overlap between P2 and Entra ID Suite. When you go with Entra ID Suite, you are getting the identity governance, verified ID, private access, and internet access functionalities. But when you're looking at this guy, right? When you're looking at identity protection, and your question is around more automated notification around alerts and suspicious login, we have been doing this for a really long time. The identity protection components, it used to be in a separate tab of itself. Now it is part of conditional access, so you can use that, and you can still get that notifications. Okay, face check is alternative of MFA code. I would say no, it is not alternative of MFA code, and that's basically the Windows Hello for Business, I'll say. It's called Microsoft Windows. I don't Hello. I'm not sure. I'm not sure on the naming with there, but basically you have your laptop, and it's, I guess, Windows Hello, where you do the face checks, or when you do face recognition for logging into your laptop or logging into your services, right? That's one of the passwordless or phishing resistant passwords, MFA, that we recommend to users as well. But what we are talking in terms of here, the verified ID, this is more of your credential management. So basically, you're giving credentials, your employer credentials to someone, or let's say you're giving your student credential, which is in form of an ID that you can provide it to your users, and they can use that to authenticate somewhere, and they can use that to get into some services. Does that make sense? Any other questions? Okay. Meanwhile, I still have 5 minutes, so I'll just go in here and I will show you right on the portal itself, right? And so this is where you need to go to see what exactly is in there and what exactly is Microsoft is cooking around Entra here, right? So you will see this at any point of time. This is my test tenant, so I have nothing in there. So just because I am a bit clumsy, I might expose some secrets here. So that's the reason. So here you have the global secure access where you can see all the goodness of global secure access, and there is certain process of getting this. When you do it for the first time, you need to get this started, and you can see this says here at the top, which is you can do it for 90 days trial, but it is now GA, so you have to make sure that you get a license. But always you can try this out, and you can just get in touch with us if you want to get this set up. We can help you out with setting this up and everything, and you can just use the trial licenses. If this works out for well for you within 30 days, 45 days, whatever the trial period is, well and good, and then you can decide on if you want to go with this or not. The same things around identity governance, and as I was saying, the identity governance basically, and this one as well, you will see a banner here. So a few people has asked me earlier before, oh, we use access reviews, now you're saying Entra Suite. That, like, I have been using access reviews for long. It's not it doesn't require any additional licenses. So here is your banner from Microsoft. It is April at what, October 30th, 2023. Like, it's almost an year now. So now you have to get an identity governance license that you can get either separately or you can get it as part of Entra Suite. Okay. There is certain things still you can do with this, and I'll not go into nitty gritty of that. But yeah, definitely for the full functionality of identity governance, you need an identity governance license there. Okay. Okay, any other questions? If not, we will be wrapping this up in a second. Hold on. Okay, so yeah, so last thing from my side is going to be from the next step perspective. If you can scan this QR and give your feedback on the session, that what exactly, if how exactly it was, if you liked it, not, and if there is any other specific areas within this today's conversation that I mentioned or that was mentioned somewhere, just let us know in there. And if you want to have a further conversations around that, or maybe have a another separate webinar around that, we will try to facilitate that. Let's say thank you so much.